Welcome to another episode of Practical Steiner with your host, me, Rhonda. This is a podcast wherein I ask the general question, what might Rudolf Steiner say about this or that, whatever subject is of interest to me. Today, I'm very delighted to have the company of Patrice. Hello, Patrice.
Hello, Rhonda.
So, I think I would like to start out by just asking about you, because I don't know much about you. I got connected with you through my two friends whom you know very well or knew a long time ago, Cordelia and Barb, who have been guests on my podcast. So I'm grateful for that connection. And they just said you're teacher of teachers for Waldorf. Mm-hmm. So can we just start there and you let me know a little bit about you?
Sure. But redirect if needed.
Will do.
So I do teach teachers, but that's not my day job. I am the director of publications and development at Waldorf Publications for the Research Institute for Waldorf Education. Our office and warehouse is in Hudson, New York. Before that, I was the leader for outreach and development at the Association of Waldorf Schools of North America. And before that, I was a class teacher and a music teacher at the Hawthorne Valley School for 13 years. I took one class from grade 1 through grade 8 and a second class from grade 1 to grade 5. When I left under duress to work for OSNA, prompted to apply for the job at OSNA by some pretty heavy hitters in the Waldorf movement. And then before that, I lived in Maine. All three of my children were born in Maine. And in 1983, I got involved with the group that founded the Merriconeag Waldorf School.
And where was that at the time?
It started in North Bath, Maine, at a place called Dam Cove Lodge. Beautiful rent-a-wedding venue kind of a place with a pond and a forest. But that lasted there. We opened the kindergarten in 1984, and that lasted for 1 year. We hired a lady who made it clear when we hired her that if we weren't going to have a first grade the next year for her daughter, she wasn't going to stay. So we got a new kindergarten teacher and moved it to Freeport to Nancy Mahoney's house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And there I have picked up the story a little bit from Nancy, who, by the way, sends regards.
Oh, you interviewed Nancy Mahoney?
Yes.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And Cordelia. So that's where they met you.
Right.
At that Freeport location. And were you all together teaching, or were you?
I wasn't teaching. I was new to the whole thing, and I think, was it you I told somebody here this weekend, I told that I began reading Rudolf Steiner sort of in self-defense, because the group that started the Merriconeag School had some pretty interesting people in it, and said that, oh, Steiner said this and Steiner said that. And I thought, there is no way that an education system this beautiful and well thought through and insightful could have said that. So I began reading on my own to sort of defend myself against the onslaught of quoting Steiner to get what you want out of the circumstances, you know.
And did you find that you were validated? Like that is?
I was validated. I was validated and eternally grateful, because I really wasn't ready. I thought, I'll start a school, this will be neat, and I don't have to do the whole philosophy thing. Because these people made me feel like I don't want to do that whole philosophy thing.
Because they were saying, Steiner said this, and you were saying, well, that doesn't sound good. Is it like that?
Yeah. There was a very little sense of humor, and there was... it was just hard to listen to the way they represented Steiner. They described the education well, but, you know, they talked funny. And so I began reading, I wasn't going to do it, and then I began reading Steiner. Because, you know, the sense of humor thing.
Yeah.
So starting the school, I founded a finance committee and insisted that we study something by Steiner as part of the work of and not knowing anything about what I was doing in the realm of Steiner, I picked world economy, which is not an easy set of lectures. I actually thought but not being an economist made it easier to read. But in these lectures, he says many things that he doesn't repeat anywhere else. He's talking to economics students at university. So there's a particular quality to the way he speaks in that one. So in the very first lecture, he says, we're here to talk about economy. This is not a direct quote, so forth and so forth. And he said, and we're not going to talk about this kind of economy unless we were to study magpie economy. And I thought, oh, good, Steiner has a sense of humor. That's good.
Very much.
Somebody in the finance committee showed up with 37 pages of research copied on the life cycles of magpies and insisted that we go through this before we could talk about the content of the lecture, which we never got to. And I kept saying, I think it's a joke. And I was like, no,
Are
he's
you serious?
referring to magpie economy for a reason. And
That's really oddly fascinating.
yeah, no, it was very oddly fascinating. Good way to put it. There were people who didn't join us because of some of the people in our founding group, and I didn't blame them. And then, yeah.
So let me go back for a second, because I'm already interested to know, you knew about Waldorf Education, not knowing about Steiner.
Correct.
So how did that happen?
Well, there was a bakery in my neighborhood, and there was a poster in the bakery. I knew that I did not want my child, who was then 3, to go to a public school.
And how did you know that?
Well, I studied John Holt and other educational philosophers I was always interested through the 1970s. And John Holt's thesis was that I learned a great deal from him, and public education was established out of pretty sharp prejudice. The aristocrats in the Boston area started the ball rolling. Aristocratic women, they were concerned that the mill worker culture was destroying the ethical fiber of the coming generation of children.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And that happened to coincide with the Industrial Revolution meeting a great peak where the industrialists realized they needed an educated consumer mass to sell the products that they could produce at an amazingly rapid pace. And so education had to be part of their plan. Yeah, so the truancy laws came. You had to go to school from this hour to that hour. And the aristocratic, the Brahmins, wanted it to be as long a day as humanly possible so that it would keep them away from the influence of the parents. Yeah, the gin drinking, amoral or immoral. Yeah, it is fascinating. And his contention was that the box in which they constructed what public education would be had not changed in 150 years. And that they keep moving the things in the box around, but there's no actual innovation around that. And as recently, I went to my teacher training in 1989, and there was a woman in my class who she and her husband pulled their children from school to homeschool them. So this is the late 80s, and her husband went to prison for 6 months for doing that.
No.
All the truancy laws across the country, as far as I know, they were at that time still in the books. It's against the law to not go to school. So anyway, that's where public education comes from, which is a very cynical from both directions. So I knew I really didn't want my child to be educated that way. I had a great belief in public education, the ideal of a free education for every child. But it was already set up to dictate what the content would be, basically. And neither was an educational goal. Yeah.
That's a deep point.
So anyway, I already knew that. And there was a poster in our Daily Bread Bakery, or whatever it was called, that had a little picture with heads, hands, and hearts together, which is the slogan that's often used for Waldorf Education. And there was a meeting. And at that time, in the 1980s, I managed a high-end restaurant in Brunswick, the 22 Lincoln, with Sam Hayward, the chef, who later became kind of a celebrity chef. He opened the 4th Street restaurant in Portland later. Do you know that restaurant?
Yeah, it's a little famous.
Yeah, it's very famous. It was in the top 50 gourmet magazine things, and he twice appeared on Martha Stewart, and in the friendliest way put her in her place, which was really fun to watch. And he cooked a James Beard Thanksgiving dinner one year, and he did a couple of gigs out in California with biodynamic and vineyards doing meals that matched their wines. Yeah, so I had a day job, and I did that for 8 years, I'm pretty sure, 8 or 9. In the 80s, when I was having babies, and it worked out really well because my husband was a carpenter, so he worked in the day. I tossed him a baby on the way out the door to get to the restaurant, and we all lived happily ever after. I had very little occasion to fight because we didn't see each other much, No, I'm kidding. It's good. So,
and then he's in agreement with you. Yes, we don't want to send our child to public education.
I think he didn't have a strong opinion. My son Seamus is from a previous relationship, and my husband adopted him. So he kind of deferred to me. And, we both really like the ideas behind the approach to educating children that's articulated in Waldorf Education. Yes.
So you saw this poster and you went to, what was it, like a presentation? Or?
No, there was an evening of talking about it, and I couldn't go because I worked at the restaurant. But I contacted the phone number and had my first, shall we say, unusual conversation with one of these people. And thought, there was enough in it that was different and interesting. And I thought it was worth pursuing.
And that school already was existing, or the poster was, hey, we would like to start this thing. Who's in?
B, not A.
Okay.
It was recruiting people to help start the school. And that idea excited me, that to start a school would be pretty thrilling. So, so the rest is history. We yelled and screamed our way to the founding of a school.
So you started the one in Bath, and then that closed after a year.
It didn't close, it moved.
Okay, gotcha.
It was the same school.
And then it went to Freeport.
And I went to Freeport, to Nancy Mahoney's house.
And meanwhile, you're still not teaching, or...
Not at all.
But you had started to read Steiner.
Yes, that's right. 1984, I read my first Steiner book.
And little Seamus started at this?
Well, actually, I did not want him to go the first year because of the lady we hired. It was very, very hard at that time. There were many Waldorf schools opening in the United States, and so recruitment was difficult. And one of us flew out to, not I, but somebody flew out to the Detroit teacher training where it was. Then it moved then to Spring Valley later to be Sunbridge, and spoke to the graduating class to try to recruit applicants. And we started in February and had no applicants by May. And, I was championing a position of, so we don't have an applicant because you need somebody on board before the last minute. And then at the last minute, we got an applicant, and she was, she's a perfectly fine person, but she saw the world as a victim, and I really didn't like that or want my child around as somebody who felt everything happens to her. And she was kind of cranky, even in the we took her to the beach, and she complained the whole time about the mosquitoes, and she didn't want to carry the basket because it was just too heavy, So I had this, I trained waiters and waitresses, and was one myself, and a cook and a bottle washer and
a mother.
and a mother. But at work, I was used to interviewing people to be waiters, and I had an experienced eye for, if I say, would you like a cup of coffee? And they say yes, and sit there. That's a black mark against you. I want somebody to say, oh, I can get it. I want a doer, not a sitter. So, So I tried to talk to my founding board there and say, it's too bad we don't have applicants. We still don't have any applicants. And I remember still one lady in the group said, I think we should be just grateful to the spiritual world that they've sent us an applicant at last. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure I don't want chances.
So you kind of helped start it, but you didn't want to have anything to do with it that year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I did a lot of work to help start it. I knew it was a good idea. And, she said if there's not a first grade next year, I'm not staying. And I secretly thought, okay, we're not having a first grade next year. And she ended up in my neighborhood. She lives in my neighborhood. We're friends. She's a lovely lady.
Funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah. So, funny beginnings. And we had a big fight the night before we were going to open because we had not yet received the license from the state of Maine. We were told over the phone that it had been approved, but the actual license would not come until. And so there was a camp who said, well, we can't possibly open them because you don't have the license. And another camp that was like, oh, come on. We lived through the 60s. Why do we think we need to follow law? Yeah, so,
we don't need no license from the man.
Yeah, that sort of position. Spoken a little bit differently than that, but you get the gist. So I think we decided to open because I felt that the approval from the state verbally saying this is coming was probably enough. And people who were like, we shouldn't do it. I said, come on, like we have to live in the world we're in. And, if anything bad were to happen, you're liable for the health and safety of the children you take and to have proper insurance and that kind of thing. And, one lady said, what could possibly happen? Everything is so great, And I said, well, you probably just jinxed the whole thing by saying it like that. But I said, there's a pond here. What if somebody drowned? And another lady shrieked, how dare you do negative visualization like that? Stop. And I said, oh, God. That was quite no births are without noise.
Right.
All birthing is noisy, and ours was true to form. But it was good, and it started, and the first year went okay. Yeah, the first year went okay. But Nancy really, when it was clear Nancy was going to come on, she really didn't like the space. She had a bad vibe in the forest, and the whole thing moved to Freeport. And then Seamus went, and then both my little girls went for at least 1 year.
And so when is your entry into the whole teaching thing?
Well, here's what happened. So I was thinking about, I'm on the board and we're figuring out what tuition will be. And I'm looking at our income and saying, we won't ever be able to afford this. So I was talking to David. I got my real estate license. I was looking at that. And I was thinking about going to law school, finding a profession that would make me enough money that I could afford. It hadn't really occurred to me. I was in my early 30s when anything is possible.
Yeah. And David is your husband.
David is my husband. He's a timber framer. And in 1987, he left like general carpenter and went to work for a timber framer, excited by this prospect. And he's now kind of a master of his trade. It's an exciting profession.
It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful. So anyway, he was learning how to be a timber framer. And a couple of things happened, a convergence, a perfect convergence. I went to college in 1970, which was after Kent State, and all extracurricular activities had been canceled, and draft dodging was popular. And I went for 1 year to Chestnut Hill College in Germantown in Philadelphia, and then transferred to Temple University. 40,000 students, and unbelievable license. It was the time when teachers were intimidated by students. I really, and I was paying my own way.
Wow.
And it really felt hardly worth it in a way. And, sex, love, and rock and roll was on the rise, and I really wasn't like that. I was just talking earlier about, I missed the whole drug scene. Angels protected me. I went to one pot party and took one drag and almost choked to death and was, scowled at for wasting the Colombian gold or whatever it was. It's like this really special stuff.
Dude.
Yeah. And I just thought, no, I'm not doing this. And watched friends of mine go down kind of a negative chute that they couldn't perceive. And so anyway, it was not fun. So I left Temple and went for 3 semesters to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, and left that to go work for a little business that was starting up in Claymont, Delaware. Ceramics, hand-painted dinnerware, and that was very fun. Very intense and very fun. So after a couple of years, I was in charge of operations. So I gathered a bunch of women who were at home who could learn how to paint things, glazes, and I insisted that everybody have a lead poisoning test every 6 months. And I was the only one who failed the test. I was a compulsive nail biter. Still am, actually. And it was a good excuse to get out of there. The women I was working with were much older than I was, and one of them was involved in a very fast kind of adult
life
thing. Yeah, and I was young and good-looking enough to be in danger at times and recognize that. So the lead thing gave me an out. I said, I can't do this. I can't be rubbing mashed potatoes in my face at age 25. I was only 21. And I went to work for the University of Pennsylvania. And all the time, I was sure I was never going to go back and finish my bachelor's degree. I had the equivalent of about 3.3 years. And I had my eye on Goddard College and Antioch because they will accept you. I knew that I could write my way into a master's degree program there. And I had just taken on, we again and again, Seamus's class in kindergarten would have been the perfect class to go forward with grades, and we couldn't find a teacher. And so I interviewed 60 families in the greater Merriconeag School community. And with each interview, I asked them, would you ever consider becoming a Waldorf teacher? And every one of them said, no, it's too much work. I would never do that. It's too much work. And and so being a choleric, I thought, well, I'll go do it, And so I had my eye on, I was sort of resolving as I talked to family after family, and I was like, are you kidding? That much? It's too much work and training and all. And I'm thinking, yeah, I could probably do this, And it has the added benefit that you're likely to get free or almost free tuition.
Right.
So then what happened is Antioch announced that they were closing their Waldorf program. They just weren't getting the enrollment they needed for Antioch to justify keeping the program.
And where is Antioch?
It's in Keene, New Hampshire, the branch that does that, and it's university. At that time, they had campuses all over the United States that have since closed, and what I'm hearing is that they're reopening some or all of those. So anyway, it was 1989, and my youngest was 2. They were 2, 4, and 9. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to get a master's degree from Antioch. So they were announcing that they were doing one last Waldorf class. And I had a very strong, difficult conversation with my husband about lifestyle choices. And we together made the decision, let's give it a go. And we will have a bailout clause. Either anybody can bail at any time. No blame. No. And I had to commute 4 hours one way to get to Antioch, yeah. And I had to go every weekend. And my husband, being the practical man he is, he said, I am not changing the oil on your car. And the car won't last if you don't change the oil. We had a diesel engine, Volkswagen station wagon. So he taught me how to change the oil, and I felt like, I am woman, hear me roar. And Lynn Thurl decided, after I decided, that she would do it too. And so we did it together. And that ended up being very good. Friends for life. So I got my training in 1989 for that reason. And I knew I needed to write 2 position papers. And the report that I had written from the interviews I did with all of the members of the Merriconeag School community, there was 1 position paper out of the way already. I mean, I had a lot of information and had done research about, I had a bibliography and all from just justifying how I was doing the research and the report. So, and then I had a big garden and was interested in herbs and home remedies and that kind of thing. So I had a lot of info. That was my second position paper. And I got in, and they said to me, of course, Antioch is expecting you to go back at some point and finish your bachelor's degree. I smiled and nodded and didn't say anything. So I got my master's degree that way and my teacher training done. And the expectation was I would come out and take the first grade class
in Freeport.
In Freeport.
Okay.
And I was looking forward to that. But when I came out of Antioch ready to teach, it was the year of the Gulf War, and there was a kind of blanket of depression over everybody. It was an extremely hard winter that winter in Maine. I got a very bad sinus infection, and nobody was around. It was like if you went to take a family photo and everybody's looking at something else and not at the camera. It was like that. So I was running recruitment nights for students. You know, I would find the venue and rent it. I would set up. I was doing a lot of administrative work and some substituting by then for the school. But I had to do everything. I had to get the guest book. I had to make sure people signed the guest book. I had to print the literature. I had to get the posters done. I had to hang up the posters for everything and put up the chairs and then do circle work and then,
for the
Waldorf
School. Because it was just a kind of a funny time frame where people weren't around.
Kind of a funny time frame, and the rising first grade was unclear, and there was a lot of turmoil in a certain way at the school. Part of it was this just general cultural feeling of dismay, but also there were some feelings that early childhood people wondered, will the first grade teacher get paid more than us? Like stuff like that sneaked in that had not been there before. And by the end, we had maybe 6 students for the first grade, between the ages of 3 and 22. It's like, and we had made an agreement as a board that I loved, that we would not open until we had 12 children. 2/3 of them had to come from the kindergarten. None of them needed financial aid. We had like a 12-step program for how to start a school. We'd invited people to come and did this very methodically. And then when the time came, they were like, oh, forget about it. Just start, because we've heard about many schools that start with, 3 or 4 students and it'll build. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. We made these promises, and that's not a good way to start the school. But it had been 7 years. We'd had kindergarten and early childhood programs with fabulous teachers. There was Nancy Mahoney. There was Christina Farmorel,
the Finnish lady
who was trained at Järna in curative education. So she had like and after training for regular education. So she was overqualified. And Cordelia was a teacher. She had the nursery school program. Yeah. So the teachers were excellent. And yet, unlike Seamus's class that would have had 15 in it and were solid kids, healthy, and it just wasn't a class. I said, we're going to have to move. I need to teach. I have debt up to my eyeballs from the master's degree I got, and I'm ready to teach, So many things happened, and I just finally said, no, I have to say no, and began looking for other schools. There were many schools that would have hired me. We had a chart up in the kitchen, and the school out in Aurora, New York, which is near Buffalo, that year had, this is like the kind of year it was, 177 inches of snow in one winter season. So David wrote it up on the board and called it the East Siberia Waldorf School. It's like, I don't think we're coming out there.
We're not going there.
I don't think my husband is really into it. So anyway, but I've been good friends with that school their whole life long. So it was just a weird thing, and I announced, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to break every rule we have put forward as symptoms. And I did my internship.
Sorry, can I just ask? So when you say, I'm not going to do this, you're referring to starting the other grades beyond kindergarten?
Yeah, starting the first grade, starting a grades program.
In that Freeport school in Nancy's house?
Yes.
So it just remained kindergarten, and then those kids got out of kindergarten and went to some regular school.
Went wherever they went. Yeah.
And you did not have enough kids to start
a first grade. According to what we had said. I mean, really, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Really wasn't. And one little boy who was in the right age range had many, many disabilities. Mm. Yeah, it would have been extremely difficult to feel that you were really starting a class. And there wasn't really room at Nancy Mahoney's house. We needed a space. So there was no space. There weren't enough kids. There wasn't a single thing going for it. And I had done my internship. I had to do a public school internship and a Waldorf school internship, 3 months each. And I did my public school internship in South Freeport. And Freeport was consolidating all its little one-room schoolhouse kind of places into one big school they were building. And the Soul School, that was the name of the school where I did my internship, was one of those that was going to be swept into this bigger program, which I thought was tragic. It was a neat little school. It was a Sudbury, a democratic school. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
All the children make up the rules, and they vote on them. So they learn the democratic process, and grown-ups stay out of it. The school was in the shape of a pentagon because George C. Soule, after whom the school was named, was a big wig in the Pentagon in the military and fought nobly in the Second World War, and they named the school after him. So it's a pentagon, it's called the Soul School, and they're moving. So I'm, during my internship, saying, hey, how about if the Merriconeag School uses this building? Would the town rent it to them? And the principal kept saying, yeah. But nothing happened. Like, I couldn't close the deal.
Can I ask you, when you were got your training at Antioch, did you read Steiner? Was that part of your training?
Yes. We read The Philosophy of Spiritual Activity. We read Study of Man.
So how was that, reading The Philosophy of Freedom of Spiritual Activity?
It was good. I was really grateful I was doing it in a group.
Yeah.
And the way it was assigned was really constructive because we had to submit to the teacher a digestion of every paragraph in the book. You had to say, this paragraph says this for every paragraph, which was really annoying at first, but really productive because you had to stop and figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good. I was glad we read it. I don't think it's read anymore in many teacher trainings, and it's really valuable because the book itself has training in it, trains your thinking, and holds the kernel of everything Steiner did from then on, very clear. And the key thing in it, I've read it several times now. I think the first time I kind of missed the point, even digesting that when our thinking is lifted to a certain high level, it connects to the universal thoughts, this awakening of the soul in cosmic thinking. Not because of us, but because it opens this portal through which the cosmic thought comes. So it's really quite an amazing book. And we just published a book at Waldorf Publications, where I work now, written by an age-old Waldorf teacher, Hugh Rennick. I think he actually taught at the Merriconeag School later in his career, at the end of his career. Called Awakening Spirit, about why it's important as a teacher to read the philosophy of spiritual activity and why, and helping, like, from a teacher's point of view, what it does, what it helps with. It's good. It's a good book.
That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's good.
I want to hear more of your progression, but I do, if I forget at the end or when, want to know your opinion or your experiences now, with the years of experience that you've had. Are the current teachers studying Steiner?
Well, I'm not in touch with the schools enough to say authoritatively yes or no, and I think it depends on each school.
That makes sense.
And schools are free, as the teachers must remain free. I think it just came up in our meeting with the board of REWE today that people who are in schools and are teaching teachers as well lament that they aren't really ready after a teacher training. Who can tell? Yeah. Self-development is a private matter. But in teacher training institutes, all the teacher training institutes I work in, and I've done things in 1, 2, 4 a year, 5 before the pandemic. And we read Steiner in the class, yeah. And so I'm guessing the answer is yes, that in all the teacher training institutes they read it. But there's something that happened. You remember the big Y2K scare? The whole world was going to come to an end and the electricity would go off and nothing happened. People spent billions of dollars rearranging their whole database and so forth.
Yep.
And then nothing happened. And I realized maybe with 9/11, something really did happen, but it was a spiritual happening. We forgot everything. Traditions just fell away. Something happened that made the world very different, in my perception only. And I thought that's what the Y2K thing was. It was like a clipping off of a continuum. Now, there's a wonderful lecture by Steiner called The Work of the Angels in Man's Astral Body. And it's a beautiful lecture, but it's scary. He talks about how there's certain work that must... Have you read it?
I have, but I cannot recall.
I've read it more than once because I can't ever remember it the first or second time I read it. And every time I read Steiner again, I have this like, why didn't he say that the first time? You know, it's like there are always discoveries. It's an amazing phenomenon. Anyway, in this, he declares that the angels have work to get done in the human etheric body, in the astral body. And the door on being able to do this work closes in the year 2000. Yeah. And he says, but the angels have to do this work, and if they can't do it in the astral body, they will do it in the etheric body, because it must get done. And if it gets into the etheric body, it will become baleful, is the translator's word for it. The symptoms will be that people desire foods that are not healthy for them. There'll be a myriad number of sexual perversions. Now, the lecture ends by saying every day there are miracles that happen. But you have to pay attention to them. You have to acknowledge the miracles. And I do this in my teacher training, like it's a homework. Who can report a miracle? Who can report a miracle that happened? And so these things matter. And just acknowledging that a miracle happened acknowledges the spiritual world in a totally non-religious way. And when you teach, oh my God, when you teach, the most stressful moments make a door opening. Like, I don't know what to do, and out comes something that you have no idea where it came from. Not from me. Yeah, but I become an agent by getting my intellect out of the way to let something come through that the child needs and that I need, you know. It happens. And to notice, you know,
miracle
with gratitude. I didn't know what to say there, and you just put it in my mouth. He says is important. So, yeah. It's like that. You have to fall in love. And in my first class, Rhonda, I had a boy. He was in first grade. He was 7, and he was the size of a 5th grader, and he was a bully. I caught him one day. He was second in line, and he had his fist out in front of this little 6-year-old's face, saying, "You let me be first, or I'm going to punch you in the mouth." Not a very lovable character. And I learned, with the help of my mentor, to love Matthew because of his ears. He had the most beautiful ears. And my mentor just said, "Oh, look at that boy's ears." As he left the classroom, he said, "That boy Matthew, he has really sculptural ears, you know." And I began thinking about his ears, and I fell in love. I thought, they really are beautiful.
That was your way in.
That was my way in, and I learned from that. You find the positive thing as your way in, and you don't have a choice. It's part of your job that you have to love the children. And then when you hit that point, when you reach that point of really loving them, it's really difficult to make mistakes or to discipline children in a way that hurts them. It's like parenting. You know, you love your children, and so when you tell them don't do that, or no, or you set a limit, it's because you love them. It's because you want them to succeed and not to be somebody who hurts other people. Yeah. So it's a very mysterious thing. How can you have to love every child in your job description? And somebody in a school I'm familiar with told me recently, you know, the parents understand that the magic is gone in the school. You know, people who went there when they, you know, are now adults, they're just like, yeah, it wasn't like this when I went to school here. There's no other word for it. It was more magic.
Really?
And that's the view of the human being. That's the magic and the meditative work of the teacher. and the mood created in the classroom, because mood is essential to what we're trying to do in Waldorf education. And mood does not happen in the present. Mood is connected to reincarnation and what happened in past lives. That's where the mood comes from, that you can feel eventually, as you get experience as a teacher, that you've struck some place where many of the children or all the children were in a previous incarnation, and it creates. Did you have experiences like that as a child? Or?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm kind of in marvel right now at what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's a mood. Create a mood in the classroom, and the enemy forces create distraction so that mood can't carry, But amazing things happen. In my internship at the Great Barrington Waldorf School, I was allowed to tell the story of Noah's Ark. And I got to the place where on Mount Ararat, the boat came to stillness, and all the people on the boat saw the rainbow as the promise from God that he would never destroy the world by flood again. And right at that moment, we were on a ground level floor with big windows. And right at that moment, an entire flock of birds flew down and landed right next to the window. And all the children were like, oh, yeah. I mean, stuff happens. It's just amazing. And if you're not paying attention, it doesn't ground it in the work the way that it should be grounded, I think. So that's the magic. The magic is love. The magic is the Christ, the teacher of the love of mankind, humankind. Yeah. So anyway, it's hard. It's hard to describe that. And I'm hoping it's not risky to do it here, that it's not a religion. And we're accused of being religious. It's not sectarian. It's a matter of fact.
Yes.
Love is a spiritual activity. And so is aspiration and inspiration and imagination, intuition. These are spiritual things that have to do with the whole human being. Without those things, life is a dreary, horrible, dry thing, and to acknowledge that the whole human being has to have the spiritual side, or it's incomplete and you're not really addressing the human being. And those are all things you can't measure on tests.
That's right.
It's not part of the outcome thing. There was a study done in Europe, maybe in Sweden, back in, I want to say like 2007, 2008. I'm trying to get my hands on it again. David Mitchell did it, and he's no longer with us on Earth. But the study was looking for moral sophistication in school children. They've done experiments where, a child will have 3 candies in front of him, and the interviewer says, oh, excuse me, I have to leave for a minute. Please don't eat any of the candies while I'm gone. And then there's a percentage that do eat the candies. And it's like really a mean experiment to do to children when you think about it. But they studied and they learned, this is a terrible paraphrase, unprofessional, I apologize, but the striking thing was that Waldorf graduates had the moral sophistication of third-year theology students or seminary students. Yeah, and that's what we're after. A sophisticated, lifted sense of ethical rightness that includes everyone, not just the people I like, or not just me.
Yes,
not just
and done without any dogmatic blah blah blah,
and without any object lessons. I used to get things in my inbox as a teacher. Teach tolerance. So
what does this mean?
Nothing. It means nothing. Yeah. So anyway, it's an amazing way to teach. It's marvelous. It's marvelous.
Yeah.
And I tell young teachers, they do it for a couple years and they say, oh God, I can make more money doing this other thing and I don't really like it. It's like, you have not given it a chance. It takes a while. I asked a teacher I really admired, Harry Kretz, brilliant math and science teacher, great guy and really funny. He was a funny guy, and a musician. And I said to him once, he came from the public school in Canada and taught in a Waldorf school. And my mentor taught with him at the New York City School. And I would lament. I would say, oh, Rudolf, I wish that I could do mental arithmetic the way Harry does. Start with really stupid questions that everybody can answer and then gradually build them up till you get to a question nobody can answer. And when you get to the question nobody could answer, it's a double lesson about a math problem and also about humility. Your smarty pants can't figure it out, and it's like, it puts them in their correct place. Thanks for coming to school. There are still things that you can learn. Anyway, it's a wonderful tool, and I wished I could use it better, And I would lament to Rudolph, and he'd shake his head. I'm like, why are you shaking your head? He's like, you should have seen Harry when he started. Oh my gosh, he would do this and he would do that. And I'd go to Harry and say, so Harry, Rudolph is telling me, did you do this? And he'd shake his head, and I'd say, he said this and this, did you do on? And he'd shake. I said, so that didn't really happen? He said, oh no, it happened. It was just a lot worse than Rudolph is making it sound like. Isn't that great?
That's awesome.
Wonderful. And I asked him once, how long did it take you to understand what a Maine lesson is? He thought and he thought, stroked his chin. Then he shifted position and he thought some more. And he said, I'd say 6 years. Yeah. And I tell young teachers, there's a joy in this that you have to earn. You can't give up too soon. It's just too easy to do it like that. You gotta stick with it. And what happens is your teaching transforms into a way of life. And there's no, young teachers come now and they say, I'm never going to meet anybody to get married like this. The school's taking up my whole life, and they want weekends off and they want, the preparation to be easier and that kind of thing. And it's like, there's some fundamental misunderstanding in that. I mean, you do need to protect your life. And now, one of the points made in my meeting earlier was teachers, when we were there, I mean, I lived through this with my second class, but my first class, you were there to teach the children, and now you really need to fend off parents. You need to.
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's really, really intense. And I don't know why. Like I was just talking to Rosie, who's an architect, and I can tell Rosie what I don't want. Maybe if I hire her as an architect, I can tell her what I want and what I don't want. But it really would shock everybody to say, I know that you did this wrong and you had to. But there's very liberal criticism of teachers. And because we do not understand community, to a certain extent we do, but there's no understanding that I am not just here for one child, namely your child. I have to think of the whole class. And there's a prejudice now that I experienced with my second class that I think has intensified. People used to say, I had 28 children in my second class. I used to like to say I had 9 girls and 432 boys.
That if you looked at them, it only looked like 8.
Anyway, I had 28 children, and parents would say things to me, nobody can learn anything in a class of 28. And I had this like, you don't get it. You learn everything. I had 15 children in first grade in my first class, and it wasn't enough children. It's too much me and not enough of the community kind of thing. I don't have an orchestra of the 4 temperaments, where they learn from each other. I said, don't you remember being in school? It's amazing when you stand in front of a class as a teacher, you realize, oh my goodness, all those things I did in elementary school that I thought the teacher didn't see, she did, and she just chose to ignore it so the lesson could go forward. It's like, yikes. And how you studied every detail of the teacher's clothing. And
Yes.
thought, when I grow up, I'm going to wear shoes like Mrs. Hollendorf. Yeah, so it's like a misunderstanding. And so with my second class, I had this shock of realization. My best example was a lady who came from Seattle, and she was an anthroposophist. And so she boasted to me about all the remedial work that had been done with Noah because he had all these learning difficulties. Curative eurythmy and therapeutic painting, and these remedies and those remedies, and yeah. And when we started, class, I had this like, oh, I see, Noah. You're just like a spoiled guy. We're going to fix this, yeah? And when a child is spoiled, it's usually damaging to the child's will, to do it for me.
Yes.
So we were doing form drawing, and he's like, So I said, you know what? Pretend that your hand is the crayon. You hold the crayon, but I'm going to move your hand like the crayon. And we did it, and we did it again, and we did it a third time, and I said, now show me if you can do it. And he would trace the lines we made, and he could do it. So he actually did a pretty good job on form drawing as the first block in first grade, straight lines and curved lines. And I was really excited. His mother came in, and I showed her the portfolio of Noah's work, and she said, that's not my child's work. There's no way that can be my child's work. And I said, well, look, it says so right there. Noah. That's Noah's, of course. I said, what do you think? I'm making this up? She's like, there's no way. She went back to Seattle for second grade and called and apologized to me. She said, I think I didn't really realize what you were doing for Noah. And then I met her years later. And her son Noah was really angry that she went and met me and didn't bring him, which is very touching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a deep misunderstanding that, the whole remedial empire in the United States is about taking a child out of community to address individual needs. And it is an empire. And it's a mindset that looks for everything wrong in a child. And in Waldorf schools, we look for everything right. Thank God you were born. Thank you for being here. What would we do without Matthew? Thank you. Matthew pointed this out. Yeah, so I just feel it's a crisis of imagination. We can't think about it that way easily in our culture. And so a lot of people wanted their children in special ed. They wanted the special attention because then they would learn something. And it's hard. It's hard dealing with parents. And I had a lady in my second class, mother of a girl, and the little girl adored me. And I think that's a problem. I think parents feel
jealous.
And it's really hard. To be a mother is to learn how to let go, and then to learn it again, and to learn it again. And this intimacy you have with the child in your body, child of my bone. It's really hard when the 2-year-old pulls away because they want to do it themselves. They don't want your help. It's like, and then they go to first grade and they love their teachers and they're criticizing you because Mrs. Maynard doesn't do it that way. It's like not understanding that you're widening the practice of love for the child. Yeah. And then they go through the 9-year change and you have to let go again. And then they reach puberty and they don't want to talk to you at all. It's really hurtful. It's really hard.
But part of Waldorf, I'm trying to remember now, this woman that I interviewed talked about as a parent how much she loved learning kind of help for parenting from having her child in Waldorf.
Yes.
So is that part of what it goes on still?
Sure. Well, it's very difficult to get, I'm learning from talking to different schools. It's very hard to get a regular parent education thing going. Parents are busy.
Yeah.
And parent education has a certain insulting quality to it. I don't think we've mastered in Waldorf education enough the gratitude we should feel for the child already being 7 and having come through many things that parents know and we do not. And, to honor the triangle you need of the child, the parent, and the teacher, to have a good relationship, Those are hard things to acknowledge. The ego is the last part of the human being to be included in the organization of the human being. So they're like baby egos. And like a 1-year-old who says his words and the whole world says, oh, you said it. That's so great. There's a great James Thurber poem where he says, it's called Thunder Over the Nursery. And he says, look, kid, I know more words and say mine better. Let's be clear, It's very funny. And I taught music in all the classes in the school, and I was teaching once a week just singing with the children in first grade because William was worried about his deep voice, and he asked if I would come in, and I did. And there was one little girl, I taught her sister. And this woman, the mother, was just beautiful. She was slender, and she could wear, tartan skirts, kilts without any stomach ball. I just so admired her. And she always had the coolest shoes. And I was in 4th grade when her little Maddie was in 1st grade. And I had just given up on wearing shoes. I got a pair of basically boots that tied, because I was losing every day at kick the can, and I couldn't run fast enough. And the mother came up to me really and truly like this and said, Maddie tells me that I should get shoes like Mrs. Maynard shoes. And I said, oh, come on, you're not taking this here. Like, look at my shoes and look at your shoes. No sense of humor, no shoes.
Oh, bless her heart.
Poor thing,
Yeah.
It hurts when your child loves another.
Yeah.
For a minute. And I kept saying to people, look, this is 1st grade. Wait till 5th grade. They'll be complaining about me all the time. You just have to wait. You gotta be patient. Then you can comfort them. Oh, sorry.
Oh, is that you? That's okay. We should wrap up anyway, so.
Okay, well, I would just say that this issue of recruiting and training and supporting new teachers is, from my way of thinking, the issue in Waldorf schools now, and to protect them somehow with more parent education and inclusion, if you will, in the process of understanding how fragile Waldorf education is in this materialistic environment in which we live, is to me the biggest issue. And to get away from, like this summer, a really good teacher. She lived through the big fires in the Palisades there, one of the many that, and 2 Waldorf schools burned, almost. This one burned to the ground. And she was in the classroom when the fires came and the evacuation order came, and there were 2 parents that they couldn't reach. And she protected her children. She kept teaching. And she protected the children from fear. One little boy said, oh, look, the classroom's turning all orange. Yeah. And I just thought, God bless you. But with her, I always ask the class at the beginning of these crash course weeks to start with homework, to make a block schedule for your year coming. I said, you may not use it, but it's helpful to begin thinking and start with your school's calendar, and then think of the festivals and what mood you want at the different times of year. And, this was 2nd grade. It was no big deal in a way. You have a lot of time in the early grades. And she came to me on Wednesday and said, would you look at whether I'm coming. She was in her teacher training while she was teaching. And she had like a week of this and 2 weeks of that. And, she did not understand at all the immersion learning concept. She said, well, how do you fit it all in? I said, if you stay with your class for 8th grade, you have no idea how hard it is to fit in like all American history from the Enlightenment to modern history,
Yeah.
You got a boogie, and you have to understand what the biographies are you're bringing. But think about mood. You want to sink into a mood and not budge. And it was like, what? Mood, like, what was it really like to be St. Francis or in 2nd grade, or to be the donkey in the Aesop's fables about the sponges, What is that like? There's a mood about that, and you have to find that mood and then stay there. So it sinks deeply in, and the children feel met about what's really going on in fables are fun because they're funny. And they're the first step you take with the children about self-examination. Because done correctly, you can ask artistically, so nobody calls anybody names. But, do you know any people like that donkey? Like that dog? And I had a great backfiring thing going in my second grade. It was a noisy class and lots of problems and stuff. But, I told a story about 2 dogs in the same family. One's a little lap dog with brushed hair and bows, and another's a dog in the... he's the watchdog, and he just barks once, and everybody says, and the little yap, she's a barking all the time. And she's mad at the big dog. She says, everybody takes you so seriously. I should get to be the watchdog. And he finally gives in and lets her do it. And nobody gets any sleep because she barks at, like, a leaf blows by the door and she barks and barks. And so she admits to the big dog, well, you're the one who should do that. And I should go back to being a lap dog. And, at the end of the story, we recalled it. And I said, yeah, do you know anybody like the dogs in that story? And one little boy, all in love. I mean, it was so sweet. He raised it. He said, Mrs. Maynard, that lap dog is like you because you're short and you talk all the time. Hey, wait a minute.
You're like, okay, anybody else?
Thank you. Sit down, So sweet, though. He was so, it was like, oh, yeah. But I talked to her, and the next day she said, okay, and then she did a good job of changing. I said, just think about what it would be like to stay with one thing. It's un-American, I know, but to stay with one thing for 4 weeks, like a whole moon cycle. And, in the class the next day, I was glad that the fellow who runs the program was sitting in on the class at the time. And he said, did you see that? Like, she was so determined. And you were so determined not to let her conclude this. She was like, well, so how do you check off the boxes? And I was like, what boxes are we talking about here? She said, reading and math. And I said, so I don't think that's what you need to worry about. Checking off the boxes. Keep your eyes on the children always and look at them with love to see how are things coming along and not check off the boxes, but does the child feel confident? Does the child feel competent? Does the child feel like she's learning? Does the, you're the check off boxes in your heart. It's not a, and she these were hard things for her. Now here's a teacher who did what she did courageously in the fire, and you can't teach that. That's something she brings as a gift. And I said that to her. You can't teach that. This person should teach. But she's nervous enough to feel that with parental pressure, she needs to let them know how the child's doing. And the questions are not, is the child happy? Does the child look forward to going to school? Is the child eager to read or hear the next story? Is the child bragging about what 2 + 3 equals? Can she with great pride recite the 6 times table for you? Those are the things to look for. Done in enthusiasm with the whole child engaged. That's what you're after, really. And the checking off the boxes should be like a no-brainer by the end of the year. If anybody wants to see it and to convince your parents that that's not what we should, looking for rosy cheeks, exciting play on the playground, love of your friends. Yeah.
Oh, and she wasn't, it's like she didn't understand Waldorf teaching at all.
Well, it's a process. This is what I'm saying. Like, 2 years in is not the time to make a decision that the work is too hard and the money's too small. That's a mistake. Or a missed opportunity, let's say, of what it's like. Again, it takes time to make a Waldorf teacher. And we throw teachers out too quickly as if they're easy to find. I yelled at a lady once. There was this awful meeting. I wasn't even all that support. The teacher had her problems. But it was like a lynch mob after this teacher. And I walked out with a parent, and I didn't want to talk to her. I was upset at what happened in the meeting. And I was walking down the path, and she said, the school just has to admit it's made a mistake and get rid of this teacher and get another one. And I turned and said, oh, okay, I'm going to walk down into the backyard and pluck a teacher off the tree that you like. I'll come to your house with the teacher and say, is this one okay? Because there are so many teachers growing on trees all over the place. Are you crazy? This woman has these fine qualities and wants to be part of the solution, she said, not the problem. Can't you help her out? Can't you face the fact that to find a teacher, especially a middle school teacher, she was a 6th grade teacher. Are you nuts? You teach the class. Go on in. See what that's like.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh. I said, I'm sorry. I'm upset. And I was trying not to talk to you. If you saw how far in front of you, I was trying to walk at a high speed, And so we laughed but it's so easy to be critical and so hard to,
Yeah, it's kind of like a theme of cancel culture.
Right.
I would say
absolutely.
It's like that.
My child needs a green teacher, and this is a red teacher. I need you to trade the red one in for a green one because that's what my child needs. It really is simple and ridiculous as that. And it's tough. Human beings are involved, and so it's complicated. Yeah.
All right. So well, we could talk for a long time. Obviously,
and already have.
Yes. And so I'll look forward to other themes and other conversations with you, Patrice. But it would be interesting to me to end with this question with you, which you met Shelley, my friend Shelley, here today, and she and I joke that we really would like to go through Waldorf education
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, as adults. Now, is that a total ridiculous thing? Because obviously we are not developing as children are with those different phases.
Right.
Is it like too late, or can you kind of get some stuff in place for adults who don't have it?
Well, it's not the first time it's been suggested, which may not come as a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be nice. Ronald Coach, who made Renewal magazine for many years, he suggested once that there be an adult Waldorf school. It's so sweet. You go through in parent evenings, you talk about the curriculum, and people repeatedly would say, oh my gosh, if somebody had explained it that way, I would have gotten it. I never understood the Pythagorean theorem or the way fractions work or the,
mythology. I mean,
mythology.
So many things.
Yeah.
Fables.
Yeah, well, it would need to be done carefully so that it wasn't misconstrued as teacher training. I think it would have to be, for all the reasons you just pointed out, be done differently. And my fear now, with experiences I had and experiences I hear other people have who are striving to be Waldorf teachers, that it would be used as a tool against teachers, because whoever taught the adult course would do it differently from every other teacher in the world in a Waldorf community. And so it becomes, well, that person said you do this. How come you aren't doing that with my child, Because the choice might be different in a teacher's heart. And having said, dangerously, that the worst enemies are those who've been trained and don't get humbled by children every day, that risk factor is there, that we know.
Yeah, I mean, my question is more like I want to be like the child.
I know.
Oh, you understood that? Yeah, I think I did.
But you see what I'm saying?
No.
Okay. So say I set up a Waldorf Education 101 for adults who wish they had been lucky enough to go to a Waldorf school. And I don't know, let's say it would last from September to December.
Okay.
One semester. And we would gallop through the curriculum and say hearts opened. And you were very grateful, and it was really fun and wonderful. The risk involved is that if you have a child in a Waldorf school, you would take that enthusiasm and say to the teacher, why aren't you doing what we learned you do in 5th grade?
Okay.
I mean, I had meetings like that from a colleague even, like, you're not teaching classical botany. It's like, right, you're right, I'm not. And I will get there. Give me a break. Give me a chance. We're only in the first week of the botany book. He brought in his older son's main lesson book.
Oh, my goodness.
Talked about how he taught it. And
okay.
Very scary.
Okay, now what if it's only for people that don't have children?
or it's only for people whose children have already graduated.
And they promise not to come near the school.
That's great.
We would have to sign waivers.
Yeah. Something, I mean, it wouldn't be enough time to really change the inner mood of soul that you're looking for really supportive. And that parents who are really supportive are wonderful. They really are wonderful. They're like salve to the teacher's soul. But, I had an experience with a parent, 2nd class, 4th grade, and she was furious with me. And I can't remember what I did wrong, but I probably did do it wrong. Like and she was really angry, this anger emanating out of her face and my face. And I had made the mistake. I was sitting on the same side of the table with her. And I, something, this is one of those angelic intervention moments, what I said was not the first thing I wanted to say, but I said, Carrie, you're a really good mother. And there are children all over the world that would give their eye teeth or an arm to have a mother. as dedicated as you are. And she burst into tears and said, I am not a good mother. I'm not. We just had school break and I had promised the boys all these things we would do. And I got the flu and we spent the week. They made me soup. They brought tea to my bed and now I work and I have to figure out how I can make that up to them. And I took her hands and said, you don't have to make it up to them. You gave them the chance to let you know how much they love you. It's not like now you have to do an equation-like thing of doing the thing. And I think I don't like getting yelled at, but man, you care so desperately. And I did make a mistake saying, and we can still talk about that, but don't, So she sobbed in my arms for a while, and we were best friends for the rest of our lives together.
It's very moving.
Yeah.
Story.
But that's a lot of what's going on, this envy or feeling left out. Or, I did homework of spelling words long before I would have done it because parents wanted an avenue in. They wanted to be able to drill something with their children and they wanted to participate. And so we did that and we had a spelling test every week. And I put up on the board, this week, the whole class got 320 words correct. Very good. That's 4 more than last week. And I mean, I never did. I kept them so parents wanted to see the individual tests. But, it's a lot of emotional things going on that drive things forward, that make issues crystallize that aren't really the real issue. And there are lucky moments like that when I just told you that break through, but it's hard to break through. It's so much easier to blame people. And look at the administration now. You just blame, And all the good things are the things I did, and all the bad things are the things that he did.
Well, classic. I mean, doesn't every administration do that?
Yeah, well. Yeah.
I mean, politics is a big mess.
Some with more force than others, shall we say.
Yes.
So anyway, thank you very much for this interview and your care and your interest.
Thank you, Patrice. I have really enjoyed it.
So have I.
And I'll look forward to another time with you.
Okay, I would like that.